So hi everybody, good afternoon, and welcome all to Crafternoon. My name is Rachel. I work at Prince George's County Memorial Library System, and I am excited to share that we're going to have a co-hosting situation today. I'll be working along with Teresa on making a craft, and she will be the one really guiding us step by step. So without further ado, here's Teresa.
Hi everybody, yeah, I'm Teresa. I usually work at the Greenbelt branch, but obviously things are very different right now. So I'm really excited to be able to share a project with you all today. What we're working on today is learning how to crochet and make other sort of like fiber crafts with recycled grocery bags. Sometimes people call it plarn because it's plastic yarn. So what I'm gonna show you is gonna be in two parts. First, I'm going to show you how to cut up a grocery bag in a way that you can use to make the yarn. And then for the second part, I'm going to show you a technique that you can use to also make sturdier baskets by crocheting with the grocery bags. So before we get started, to make sure everyone has what they need on hand, you'll definitely need a crochet hook. The size doesn't have to be very specific, somewhere in the like 5 to 6 millimeter range, but a little smaller, a little larger is fine, just as long as it's not huge or tiny, somewhere in the middle. You'll want to have a ruler on hand and scissors, some kind of clip, like a bag clip or a clothespin, and then of course some grocery bags. Ideally, they have minimal tears and holes in them, because that's going to make it a little tricky to cut up. If you do have a bunch with tears though, those will work well for the second part, so hang on to those. But for making the yarn, you'll want them as clean and holeless as possible. All right, so let's dive in then. Gonna start out with a grocery bag like this. Go ahead and grab the seam at the end and the strap at the other end and kind of pull it out straight as best you can so it's easy to lay flat. And then I'm going to reverse my camera so you can see this a little bit better. There we go. So go ahead and lay the bag out as flat as you can. Make sure that the seam at the end is nice and straight. Takes a little bit of fiddling, but you should be able to get that nice and flat. And then we're going to just fold it up, and do your best as you fold it to keep the seam as straight and aligned as possible. So just fold that in half a couple times, and we're going to get a nice flat roll. And again, trying to keep this end as lined up as you can. Just flatten that out. And then I'm gonna flip that around because I'm gonna be cutting with my right hand. Starting at the end with the seam, take your scissors and trim that off. Start about that there. We're not gonna use this bit, just set that aside. And then you're going to cut this into sections that are about 1 inch wide. It doesn't have to be exact. I don't usually measure. I usually just eyeball it, and it ends up somewhere between 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch wide. But that's what we're going to go for, about 1 inch. So just snip that, and we're going to just cut sections about that size all the way down. And if it helps you to lay this flat and measure it, you of course can do that. If you have a cutting mat and a rotary blade, that could be an easy way to do it too. I've found this method to be really easy to do without a lot of extra equipment. And then stop short once you get to the handles, because we're not going to be able to use those for the yarn. Right about there. The handles can get set aside. And now, yeah, you should have all these little snips that you made. You can see it's a nice even loop. Then to make it into a strand that you can actually work with, we have to connect them all, of course. So open up 2 of those strips that you cut. And then hold one end in each hand. Oh, and you'll want to keep it a closed loop. So you don't want to cut it open, just keep it a nice closed loop. So have one loop open in one hand, take the other loop and push it through like that. Oops, there we go. Pull that tight, and then open up the loop that you pushed through and pull the other end of that strand through the loop. Pull it tight, and you have a nice, neat little knot, and that really doesn't get in the way when you're working with the yarn at all. It just slides right along, no problem. I'll show you that one more time. Hold one loop open in one hand, and the end of another strand. Put that end through the first loop, bring it over, reopen that loop, and pull the rest of the strand through. And there you go. That's the gist of it. I usually don't connect very many strands together at once before I start working on a project, because then you can get kind of unruly if you have a very long strand that you're trying to keep track of on one end. And if you try to wind it up in a ball to work with, that kind of falls apart because it's a pretty slippery material. So I usually will just crochet until I get to the end and then add another strand then and then keep working. But whatever works best for you. There are other ways to cut up the bags to make it into yarn. I've seen methods that you can use to get one continuous strand, but I think this method is the quickest and easiest to work with because it's not as tedious as other methods, and you end up working with 2 strands together because it's a loop, and that makes it just that much sturdier. So yeah, that's how you make Klarn. It's a very easy material to work with. I haven't found that it's any more difficult for being slippery or anything. And you can use this for just about any crochet pattern that you come across. And I imagine for knitting and other fiber arts too. I've only used it for crocheting. But there's definitely a lot of potential with this project. So that's that for that part. Let me bring the camera back around.
So Teresa, quick question. Could you show us a preview of what we'll end up with so we can kind of have a goal to work towards?
Yeah, so a couple projects I've made this way are I've made a few bags. This is just like a very basic single crochet. So it's definitely like not an advanced crocheting technique at all. This is like the first stuff you learn. And it ends up, it's pretty sturdy. It has some nice give to it. I've made this one here. I use regularly for my grocery shopping. It's so big, it's kind of hard to give you a good view of it.
Wow, that's cool.
But because it's so large, I always load it way too much, and it ends up very heavy, and it's held up just fine. And I've been using that for a while. So you can make some really practical projects with it, and you get some fun color variation from the print on the bags. If you have colored plastic bags, you can do some fun stuff for the patterns that way. So it's a great material to work with.
I'm new to crocheting as well, and I found a really good resource through the library called Creative Bug, and I think that's what you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Since our craft programs aren't very long each week, I don't have time to do like beginner crochet techniques, but you definitely should go to Creative Bug if you're just getting started with this. And there are some great tutorials there, and then you can dive right in with Klarn. Like I said, it's not difficult to work with at all. Do you have any questions or want me to review anything before we go on to the next part?
I'm ready to go.
All right, great. So the next part we're going to do, I'm going to show you a technique you can use to make sturdier objects like baskets. This is one that I'm working on right now. So what we're doing here is we have one whole grocery bag that I've twisted up into a sort of rope, and then you do a simple crochet stitch around the rope to hold it all together, and you end up with this very sturdy object. I've made myself a very large laundry basket this way that I've been using for about a year, and it's held up great. It looks kind of cool too, if I do say so. So yeah, I'm going to show you how we do that. Let me bring the camera back around. Get all this out of the way. And here we go. Okay, I've got the crochet hook here. So I've already been working on this for a while, but I can show you how we're doing this. I like to have the rope as twisted up as you can before you get started. After I show you the basic stitches, I'm going to show you how to start a project like this on your own, but for now, I'll show you in progress. Here is a clothespin that I use to just clip that in place so I don't have to keep track of quite as much with my hands as I'm working on this. So you're going to have the rope laid on top of your last row that you're working with. Then put the crochet hook through the stitch below underneath the rope. Reach behind the rope, grab the yarn, and pull that through. And then do a yarn over and pull it through both loops. And that's a stitch right there. I'll show you a couple more. Grab it from behind, pull it through, yarn over, and through. And just one more, because why not? There you go. So that's the basic stitch. Now, when you get to the end of the bag that you're working with right there, you'll have to join in a new one. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Once you have about this much space left, this is roughly as long as the handles on a grocery bag. You're going to leave that loose and open it up. And then we'll take the next bag that we're using right here. Let me unfold that for you. This is where, if you have bags with a lot of holes, this is a good place to use them. So just like loosely fold up the ends, try to keep the seam as even as you can, again, like you did the first time, but it doesn't have to be laid flat like before. And then just twist that up. Start at the seamed end so that you can push any air out through the end with the handles. Just twist that up. And then stop when you get to the handles, leave those loose. And then you'll tuck the handles into the open end. Fit them in as closely as you can, and then twist all of that together. And you'll probably also want to give just a little snip in the seamed end so that any extra air can get pushed out here at the end. And then once you have that all twisted up, clip it down with your clothespin so it doesn't unwind. I've misplaced my clothespin. Well, I'll hold it in place, but oh, here we go. I found it. It couldn't have gone too far. Okay, so yeah, clip that down so it doesn't unravel. And then you'll just keep working like before. It'll make a slight lump in your work because you've got, two bags there and it's a thicker rope, but throughout the project, it's going to end up evening out, so you don't really have to worry about it. And just keep working from there. There you go. And you can do a lot with that. You can find some great patterns for rope baskets. I unfortunately didn't see any in Creative Bug, but you can definitely find them other places on the internet that will give you, specific stitch amounts for each row to do. Or if you want to just kind of wing it, you can always do that too. To be honest, that's what I've done with these projects.
What I like about this, Teresa, is that even if you do mess up or you don't like your product the first time around, you haven't spent a lot of money on yarn or anything like that. So, and you're finding an eco-friendly way to use things that you probably have around your house already. Yeah, absolutely. I love being eco-friendly, but so often that comes with a higher price tag, and this is dirt cheap, costs you absolutely nothing. So yeah, if we have time,
I can show you how to get a project like this started.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. I'll set this aside. So I have some yarn that I've already made here. There are a couple different methods for starting circular projects. All the baskets that I've made with this method have been circular, so it's good to start with a loop. My favorite method is the magic loop method, so I'm going to show you that. You're going to start by making a slip knot. Turn that through, and then let me make that a little bit longer. Here we go. And now make sure once you have that slip knot that the end that can tighten and loosen it is the end that you won't be working with. This needs to be what can tighten and loosen the knot. All right, so we have that loop open. Now hold it with the working end up. Take your crochet hook. Now, the beginning of a project is always the trickiest, trying to find your stitches and stuff. So it can be a little tedious, but it's worth it. So I'll do my best to show you here. Start with a yarn over on your hook. Then go through the slip knot, yarn over behind, pull it back through, and you should have 2 different loops on your hook. And then 1 more yarn over and pull that through. So that was just a basic single crochet, but we did it through this loop that we started with. I'll show you one more time. I'm going to go through the loop, grab the yarn from behind and pull it back up to where you started. You should have 2 loops there, 1 yarn over, pull it through both, and that's our second stitch. We're going to do 6 stitches in this loop. So here's 3, 4, 5, and I've just realized I'm about to lose my loop, so make sure you don't do that. All right, that was 5, and then last one, 6. Here, there we go. Once you have those 6 stitches, take the end of your slip knot and just pull it tight, and you end up with this really snug loop to start with. And that's your first row of stitches. That will be the center of your basket. How are you doing, Rachel? Nice. So you can just pull that end and it'll tighten right up. Great. So I'm going to do 1 stitch in our second row. The 6 stitches that we just did are the first row. So do your best to find the first stitch of that row. I always find starting your second row to be the trickiest part because you have to make sure all the stitches are open. But after that, it's pretty easy going. So find that first stitch, push your hook through, do a yarn over, pull it back through the stitch. You should again have 2 loops on your hook, 1 yarn over, pull that through both loops. And that's the first stitch of our second row. The standard rule for doing anything that's round and flat is that you're going to add 6 stitches per row to keep it flat. So we have 6 stitches on the first row, the second row will have 12, the third row will have 18, and so on. So that means we're going to be doing 2 stitches in each stitch of the first row. We've done our first. I'm going to do 1 more, and then we're going to start introducing the rope to start the basket. Now, I've shown you how to twist up the bag into a rope. I will say though, for the first rope that you're introducing, instead of folding it up so that the end is square, like I showed you before, you kind of want a tapered end to introduce so that it can gradually get up to the usual thickness of the rope. So I just start at one corner of the bag, and then you can start to twist that up. All right, so now you have that nice thin and tapered end. Now it always takes a couple stitches to really get it in there, but we can take care of that. Excuse me. So keep putting the closed in places I'm forgetting. Here we go. Hold the tapered end right at the beginning of the next stitch you're going to work, and then you want to use your clip to hold it in place as best you can. It's a little tricky because the project is so small at this point, but it will help you keep your hands free. And then hold that tip in place. Now, as you're working thread there, we're going to do the same thing as before. Reach underneath the rope into the stitch below. Grab the yarn from behind. Reach over the top of the rope. Grab the yarn. Pull that through both loops. So it's a little hard to tell at this point, but we do have the end of the rope inside the stitch we just made. It's going to take a couple more stitches to make sure it's really secure. So we'll do one more. Remember, we're working 2 stitches in each of the stitches below, so this is our 4th stitch of the row. Let's do a few more for good measure. And remember, all of our virtual programs here, that like our Crafternoons, are going to be saved on our YouTube channel, so you can come back and rewatch anything that you need to. Sometimes the clip can get in the way, but do what you need to. So yeah, we're just going to keep going along with that, 2 stitches in each of the stitches below around that rope until it's just really secure. You might need to go about might need to go about halfway around the circle to really get it secure. But we're getting there.
Mine is surprisingly looking pretty good, Teresa. I'm really happy.
That's great.
Yeah, it's kind of like it starts taking form and you're like, okay.
Yeah. At first it can be a little, it looks like it's going to be very daunting because there are just a couple extra things to keep track of. But honestly, it's still just your basic crochet stitches, and once you get it, you can just go. So yeah,
an awesome thing to do while you're watching Netflix or television or wherever, just relaxing.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a great time to pick up, if you are just getting started with crochet, this is a great time to pick it up. Because I find also that it really helps with like my anxiety and stuff too. Like, it's just a nice repetitive motion. You can have very visible progress, and you're doing a little something for the planet by recycling the bags. So it's overall just a very nice experience.
Yeah, like my project last week was really kind of in the same vein, because we were recycling old t-shirts, and we were cutting fringe and then tying the fringes together to make bigger pieces. And it's just like you can sit there tying knots for hours and you don't really get tired, and it's just like very fun.
Definitely. So yeah, that's it. That's the basics of it right there. Yeah, I hope
we're gonna encourage all of our watchers out there to give a shout out or ask a question in the chat box, and we'll be able to answer your questions as we go. Also, if you complete any of these Plurn projects and want to share, we'll have a way to get access to our social media and be able to share what you've made. So thank you so much, Teresa. I'm really excited about this. I can't wait to just reuse all my plastic bags and make cool crafts.
I've gone through so many. I've had to ask friends to send me all their unused bags. So.
All right, well, we'll be signing off, and remember to join us every Friday at 3 p.m. for Crafternoon, as well as all of the wonderful other virtual events we have going on. Visit us at pgcmls.info/virtual-events. And we have tons of stuff for people of all ages. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Have an awesome afternoon and weekend. Bye-bye.